Bennett is on it.
What?
Bennett is on it.
Here. We're rolling. And I'm going to try to move as fast as possible so we can get out here on time. There once was a rich man who owned a large farm, many sheep. And this man decided he was going to throw a party. A little fiesta with him and his friends. He called all of his friends over for a party and for a feast. But instead of taking one of his own sheep for this meal, he decided to go to his neighbor's house, who had one young lamb. He took the lamb and he slaughtered it, and he served it to his guests for the food. Now, I think you would agree with me that what that guy did was wrong. You shouldn't steal from people, especially not poor people, for your own amusement. That is wrong. But why? Why are we so ingrained? Why are we so hardwired to make moral judgments? We did it today. We are trying to see what are the moral implications and the moral values of the things that we do, the decisions that we make. We can't escape these, but today I want to ask, where do they come from? Today I'm going to propose to you that God is the foundation of these moral truths and these moral realities. As a Christian, and as someone who is from the Reformed tradition, this kind of, we call it presuppositional approach, is very, very central to my thought and my study. And I really hope that this can be an enlightening and just an enjoyable conversation for us today. The first thing we have to consider is the nature of moral truth. When we have moral ideas and moral judgments, we have to consider, are these facts that we're appealing to or just our feelings? And this isn't to discredit that, yes, our feelings are very, very important because they're core to who we are. They make up our daily experience, but it is important to recognize that having thoughts and opinions are different than appealing to facts. And when we make moral and ethical judgments, often our experience is that we are appealing to facts. When we say this is right or this is wrong, we're appealing to a standard, and this is important because morality that is a fact can be measured, it can be objective, it can be known. It can be applied between persons, and it is very, very meaningful and important. Now, I do want to clear up a common misconception. A distinction in perception of moral truth does not mean there is an absence of moral truth. So this is to say that just because we are going to disagree on what's right and wrong doesn't mean that there isn't still a standard by which to measure. I want you to consider this illustration. An archer goes into a field, and 200 yards away there's a target. And he says that target is blue and red. And then he leaves. And the next archer comes up and looks at the target and says that target is red and white. Now either one of them is wrong or both of them is wrong, but nevertheless the target is still there. So we are going to disagree ultimately about what's right and wrong, but we can still say, yes, there is a target. There is a standard to go by. That target, so to speak, is still out in the field. And what I believe and have come to conclude is that that target is actually found in God. God is the foundation. Now this is actually very, very good for us because that means that morality and moral truths are real. They're good, they're perfect, and ultimately they're knowable. If we see that God is the foundation of morality, it means that we can actually know what's right and wrong. We don't have to dive into subjectivism where we're all disagreeing and we have different opinions and there's no way to resolve the disagreements. And we don't have to just stumble around in a void in a universe where there is no moral truth. This actually is a point that was brought up by Richard Dawkins. Richard Dawkins was a part of the New Atheist movement, and he wrote a book called God Delusion, and unwittingly, I think, made a great point. On his conversation about a universe without God, he said that it would be one with no design, no purpose, no evil, no good, nothing but blind, pitiless indifference. And this would be a crappy place to live because what it means is we can't really know what's good. We can't really know how to measure and how to evaluate our experiences and the way that we treat other people. There's no way to be a good person. I think that demonstrates what happens when we step away from this consideration of God as the moral standard. But I know that that's quite a lot, and this is the part I'm really excited for when we get to talk about this. So if there's any thoughts and opinions that you have, I would love to hear them. Yeah?
One of the, actually, I'll admit I broadly agree with what you said. It's kind of the problem with, I've noticed without having God being a part of the equation is that you end up running into consequentialist arguments well, things are only bad because things will only become bad because you don't want a certain outcome, but someone else might want a completely different outcome, and thus things are bad for different things are bad because there's different routes to different destinations, and since there's no objective destination, there's not really there can't ever really be an objective agreement on what is good and bad.
Are you saying that as like a critique of subjectivism, where?
But a critique of morality in the absence of God.
Okay, yeah, I would agree. Yeah. Yeah, Reagan?
I actually really love that you did this topic because I feel like this is something I've been thinking about a lot recently, and I really have no one to talk about it with. But I've been a Christian for many years, and I do still believe in God. I was a very devout Christian growing up.
Sure.
And just recently, though, I've started to think about, is God really good if he's not just?
Okay.
I don't think, and so in my opinion, to say that God is the foundation of morality, I mean, how could a God be moral if he's not giving people, equal opportunities and I mean, there are children who die from cancer.
Yeah.
How is that fair?
So that's actually a great question. I'm actually really glad you asked that question. This is what we call an internal critique. Right? An internal critique of a belief system is saying, okay, given that you believe this, how do you explain the rest of it? And the way that Christian philosophers throughout the centuries have said is, well, in order to essentially make a moral judgment on God, to say God has done something wrong or done something evil or that he's upholding an unjust system, what you would need to do is posit, assert, and then prove that there exists a standard above God. So if you were to say, well, I believe that, let's say, the God of the Bible has done something evil, you would actually need a standard that sits above God, another God to judge him and to say that what he's done is evil. And so the intellectual answer to the question is, well, God can't do anything wrong because he is that standard. The more pastoral answer to that question would be that God tells us he's good, and the witness of Christ is that he's good, and the witness of the apostles is that he's good, and that I, as my own conclusion, trust in that. And that's what I would say, is that God, both in an intellectual sense and a rational sense, can't be unjust or ungood because he is the definition of good. But then in the more, emotionally appealing sense, I guess, would just say he has a better picture of what's going on and a better reason for what he's doing is how I would approach that. But that's a great question. I'm really glad you asked that question. Does anyone else have any thoughts, comments, or questions on where God sits here in the more? Yeah, Caleb.
The thing that comes up, or that popped in my mind as I listened to the speech is, I don't really know if it's a question or a statement, but rather what I feel like it is ruminating with me as I'm thinking it through, but it would be if God is the basis of morality,
yeah,
how and I guess I kind of answered my own question in the thought was how do you, I guess, explain the interpretation of people using God as a means for immoral acts?
Yes,
but I guess that would be more so on the people than
yes. So that would be, of course, you can make the Bible or any text say what you want it to if you misinterpret it, if you misapply it, if you blatantly rip it out of context, and that has been done by evil people throughout the years. It's been done by, that was done by the Nazis in Germany. It's been done and taken advantage of by plenty of people. And so I appreciate that you recognize, I'm not proposing that we should just weaponize Scripture or weaponize God's truth. But what I am arguing for is, well, is it wrong to reinterpret or misinterpret the Bible? I would say yes. But it's wrong because it goes against the standard that God has set. Right? And so whenever we're passing that moral judgment, we still need a standard. Because if we're the standard, if we as human beings are the collective standard, then we're just going to have 8 billion different ideas of what's going on. What we need is a separate, outside of ourselves standard that comes from a personal being, which would be God. So yeah, I think that's a great point, though, is that we do have to be careful that we're just actually going with what God has said, going with the text, and not trying to read into it our own personal biases and opinions. Any other thoughts or questions before we kind of close up here? All right, well, thank all of you guys for participating, and thank you guys for listening. To recap, my position on this is that moral truth is real. Moral truth exists. There is a moral standard. It's real, and we honestly can't escape it because we appeal to it. We can't escape from there being right and wrong because we want to say that what other people do is either right and wrong. And we can't be hypocrites. We can't just say, well, they have a moral standard, I'm on my own. I can do whatever I want. That would be wrong. And so we can't get away from this, but the only way to really explain it, the only way to really have a foundation for it is to see it in God. And I think R.C. Sproul, who is a religious philosopher, he's part of the Reformed tradition, he's a Presbyterian, has a great quote on this. He says, "The departure from divine revelation has brought our culture into chaos in the area of morality. We've lost our basis of knowledge, our epistemological foundation for discovering the good." And what he means by that is we just don't have a way of evaluating what's right and wrong. We don't have a way of evaluating this. Is this what we should be doing because we've fallen into subjectivism? And I would say that God and his word revealed in Scripture is the foundation of morality. And if we separate him from Scripture, the law from the lawgiver, then we actually can't have either. Thank you.
Every time these conversations pop up, I'm just reminded of what my professor, Robert Olach, when I taught ethics class here at Sinclair, said. This guy has to be dead now because he's pretty at this point. He said there's only one universal rule of all morality: do good and avoid evil. Now, how you find good and evil, our friend here would definitely say God. Others have different answers for that one. So that's a universal. So, okay.